Hello, welcome to Bored and Confused, where I review shows based on two criteria. One, was I bored? Two, was I confused? Today's show is Mexodus, playing off-Broadway at the Audible Minetta Lane Theater. Now, before we dive in, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It will really help people find these reviews and hopefully get more people going out to see theater. All right, let's talk about Mexodus at the Minetta Lane Theater. So Mexodus is a relatively new show. It's created and performed by Brian Quijada and Nygel D. Robinson, and it's directed by David Mendizábal. Mexodus began as a pandemic project. During lockdown, Brian Quijada started digging into the little-taught history of enslaved people escaping south from the US into Mexico rather than going north. He came across the research of Dr. Roseann Bacha-Garza, a historian at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Her studies on the southbound Underground Railroad and the thousands of people who found freedom in Mexico after slavery was abolished there in 1829 was the spark that inspired Quijada and his collaborator Nygel D. Robinson to start shaping this piece. Mexodus had earlier productions at places like New York Stage and Film in 2021, then Baltimore Center Stage and Mosaic Theater Company in DC in spring of 2024, and Berkeley Rep in 2024 as well. And now it's having its premiere at Audible's Minetta Lane Theater and running till October 18th. So, what is Mexodus about? Here's the story. Mexodus takes place in the mid-19th century, around the 1820s to the 1850s, when slavery was still legal in Texas but had been abolished in Mexico in 1829. The show follows Henry, an enslaved man in Texas. He gets into an altercation with his master, which means Henry has to run for his life. And because he's in Texas, Henry's plan is to go south, cross the Rio Grande, and escape to Mexico. He makes it across, but gets badly injured in the process. He is rescued by Carlos, a former military medic from Mexico, now working a farm that isn't his own. And he uses his military medical skills to patch Henry up. And over time, they work together on this farm and forge a friendship. Eventually, Henry realizes he needs to move on to build a life for himself as a Mexican rather than remaining in limbo. The narrative is fairly straightforward: escape, recovery, friendship, self-realization, and moving on. The show is about 90 minutes, running time, no intermission. Musically and stylistically, it's built around live looping. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's when you play an instrument, you record it, and then it loops that phrase, and then you layer on another instrument, and you do that all live, and it's all coming through the sound system, and then you can sing on top of that. They have little pedals on the floor that you can start and stop the loops whenever you need to. These two performers/writers are multi-instrumentalists. They're singers, they're actors, so they're able to build up layers of sound in real time. The instrumentation mixes hip-hop, folk spirituals, Mexican folk rhythms, and there are rap sections. Some of them are in Spanish. So this show might be billed as a musical, but in my mind, it's not a musical play in the traditional sense, where songs spring out of character and situation. You know, a character wants something, they hit an emotional peak, and they burst into song to express that specific moment. Most of the songs in Mexodus are less about what Henry or Carlos are feeling in the moment, and more about big, sweeping ideas, freedom, history, identity, justice. And that's really inspiring in its own way, but it doesn't always give you the kind of emotional, character-specific punch that a traditional music theater number would. You're not getting the I Want song or the cathartic ballad. You're getting more of a historical or thematic meditation delivered through loops and rap. But that's not to say that this show isn't succeeding in a myriad of other ways. Mexodus is a very, very unique show. The talent on display is astonishing. These two guys, Brian Quijada and Nygel D. Robinson, they don't just sing, they move, they act, they play multiple instruments, they loop live, they switch between styles. It's super impressive, and it's rare. It's not something I've seen very often. And it makes watching the show really exciting because you're seeing this craft in action. And I think the most impressive part of this show is the technical inventiveness, the live looping, the sound design, the musical variety that can be achieved within the constraints of live looping. Those are the real strengths of the show. I love that this show exists. It sheds light on a part of history that I didn't really know about or didn't learn a lot about, that there was a network of escape southward into Mexico, not only northwards. But there are things that also held me back a little bit. The narrative is simple: escape, recovery, friendship, and moving onward. There aren't many moments of real dramatic tension where I was like, oh wow, how is this going to resolve? Fights and conflicts happen, but they're over fairly quickly and patched up. The sense of high stakes sometimes feels modest or inevitable. Musically, the live looping is a big draw. It's cool to see them build up these tracks piece by piece on stage. But because of that structure of using live loops, many of these songs end up sounding somewhat similar in form. They have simple chord progressions, they have the repeating loops, and that works insofar as it reinforces the style and gives cohesion to the piece, but it also means that the melodies aren't really adventurous. And I sometimes wish the rap parts were a little more intelligible. Same with the Spanish sections. I don't speak Spanish. I only caught, I don't know, maybe 60 to 65% of the lyrics in this show. If this had been a press ticket, I would have had a script that I could review, and that would have really helped me to appreciate the craft of the lyric writing. Also, I wish there were deeper character development. I only understand Henry and Carlos kind of on a basic level. Henry is a former slave running for his life, and Carlos is a former military medic who feels he betrayed his fellow soldiers. But their hopes, their dreams, their internal arcs could be much stronger. I wanted there to be more tension, more emotional escalation in certain parts, and I thought that could have helped develop these characters into multi-dimensional people. So, was I bored? No, not really. This is only a 90-minute show, and there were moments when I felt the pace had become a little bit predictable, but overall, because the performances are so active, the music, the looping, the switching instruments, the physicality, the way these two guys interact, I was totally engaged the whole time. I was more intellectually intrigued than on the edge of my seat for dramatic reasons. But the show kept me listening, watching, and thinking. Was I confused? I wasn't confused about the narrative, which is pretty simple, or the larger themes about erasing of history and racial prejudice, which are addressed with a pretty heavy hand in this show. But I really wish I had been better able to understand more of the lyrics, especially during the rap sections or the Spanish parts, which just flew over my head. Also, given the simplicity of the narrative, sometimes I wanted more clarity about the motivations of these characters. I was really curious about Carlos because I really wanted to know his backstory. I wanted to know his hopes and his dreams. I want to know, does he have a wife? Does he have children? Does he want to have a wife? Does he want to have children? Is he into Henry? But confused in the sense of not understanding what the show was trying to do? No, not at all. The structure is very clear. The themes are very clear. It's just that in the smaller details, I wanted a little more. So my final thoughts. Even with the reservations, I think Mexodus is absolutely worth your time. It may not be the kind of musical where you leave saying, whoa, what an incredible plot twist, or oh, that climactic scene just blew me away. But you'll leave feeling something and wanting to learn more. The artistry is really high, the performers are multi-talented, and the style is really bold. For what it tries to do, it really succeeds for the most part. So if you're someone who loves theater for emotional resonance, for musical innovation, for undertold history, this is going to be right up your alley. If you want a big Broadway spectacle or a more traditional narrative musical with songs that you'll be humming as you leave the theater, then this might not be your jam. So let's talk about tickets. The Minetta Lane Theater is small. It only has 391 seats, and every seat in that house has good sightlines. So there's not a bad seat there. I've sat in the top, I've sat down in the orchestra, I've sat everywhere, always a good seat. I got my tickets through the Today Dix lottery for $38, which is a great deal. And then the box office decides where the lottery seats are going to be based on availability. So if you go on like a Wednesday matinee, you could get an amazing seat. My seat was the fourth row from the front, 4 seats off the aisle towards the side. It was a little close, but it was great. You know, you're right up there in the action. And I didn't miss a thing. I felt almost immersed in this show. If anything, you know, being that close really added to the energy of the show. I could see the sweat, I could see the spit. It was great. So let's sum this up. Mexodus is not perfect. It doesn't reach for every dramatic high. Some parts feel inevitable. Some songs blend in more than stand out. But it has such great energy. has so much creativity and it has a lot of heart. So in my book, it is absolutely worth seeing. I'm really glad I saw it. It was well worth the $38. It's one of those shows that reminds me how theater can really break out of the box and do whatever it wants. So go check out Mexodus and tell me what you think of it in the comments. And I will see you at the next one.
Don't bore me. Don't confuse me. If you do, then you'll lose me. Don't wanna drift away, wanna stay inside the play. Keep me engaged, keep me amused with what's in front of me. 'Cause I don't wanna be bored and confused.